The call from the real estate office came on a Thursday afternoon while I was reading in my study. A cheerful woman named Lisa told me she had wonderful news about the sale of my house on Maple Street. I set down my book slowly, confusion settling in my chest like a cold stone. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," I said carefully. "I haven't put my house up for sale." There was a pause. "Oh, Mr. Henry, your son-in-law Michael arranged everything. The closing is set for next Tuesday. He said you were so excited to move to that lovely assisted living facility." My grip tightened on the phone. Michael. My daughter Sarah's husband of 4 years, the man who'd been telling everyone, including Sarah, that my old mind was slipping and I needed supervision. "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Thank you for calling." I hung up and sat in the silence of the house I'd lived in for 38 years. Michael thought he'd found the perfect mark in a confused old man. He was about to discover just how sharp my mind really was. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Henry. I'm 74 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a practicing attorney specializing in real estate law. Retired voluntarily, not because my mind was failing, but because I wanted to enjoy my remaining years. My wife Elizabeth passed 5 years ago from cancer, leaving me this house and more money than I'd ever need. Sarah is my only child, 38 years old, works as a nurse at the county hospital. Good heart, always worried about me living alone. She married Michael 4 years ago after a whirlwind romance. He's 35, supposedly works in sales, though I've never been entirely clear about what he actually sells. Charm, mostly, from what I can tell. After Elizabeth's funeral, Michael started making comments. Little things at first. "Henry's getting a bit forgetful, isn't he?" when I'd repeat a story. "Maybe we should check on him more often," when I'd forget to call Sarah back immediately. The suggestions were always wrapped in concern, always delivered with that practiced smile. Sarah, bless her heart, began to worry. She started visiting more frequently, asking pointed questions about my daily routine, my medications, whether I was eating properly. I appreciated her concern, but I noticed how Michael guided these conversations, planting seeds of doubt about my independence. Then came the day everything changed. 3 months ago, Michael showed up at my house with a briefcase and that smile that never reached his eyes. Sarah was working a double shift, so it was just the two of us. He sat across from me in my living room, the same room where Elizabeth and I had celebrated 35 wedding anniversaries. "Henry, we need to talk about your future," he began, opening his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Sarah and I are worried about you living here alone. This house is too big, too much maintenance for someone your age." I asked him to explain what he had in mind. "There's a wonderful assisted living facility called Golden Sunset Manor, about 20 minutes from our place. Sarah could visit every day. You'd have help with meals, medication, companionship. And Henry, let's be honest, your memory isn't what it used to be." He pulled out glossy brochures showing smiling elderly people playing cards and walking in gardens. Then came the real purpose of his visit, a stack of legal documents. "I've taken the liberty of having some paperwork prepared, power of attorney forms, so Sarah and I can help manage your affairs. A listing agreement for the house. We can get this place sold and get you somewhere safe before you—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Before your condition gets worse." I looked at the documents. They were professionally prepared, thorough, and would essentially give Michael complete control over my assets. "What condition?" I asked. "Henry, your old mind is slipping. Everyone can see it. Last week you forgot Sarah's birthday. The week before that you got lost driving to the grocery store you've been shopping at for 20 years. Both lies, but delivered with such conviction that I almost questioned myself. I've spent 40 years in courtrooms. I know when someone is running a con, and Michael was running a masterclass. But I also knew that responding with anger would only reinforce his narrative about my mental state. So I did what any good lawyer does. I gathered intelligence. "You know, Michael, you might be right," I said slowly, pretending to study the documents. "Maybe it is time to think about these things, but this is a big decision. Can I have a few days to consider it?" Relief flickered across his face. "Of course, Henry. Take all the time you need. But don't wait too long. The housing market is hot right now, and Golden Sunset has a waiting list." After he left, I called my longtime friend and colleague, Robert, who still practices elder law. I told him everything. Robert's response was immediate and furious. "Henry, what Michael's doing is textbook elder financial abuse. The fact that he's spreading rumors about your mental capacity while positioning himself for power of attorney is criminal." We spent the next week developing a strategy. First, I underwent a comprehensive neurological evaluation. The results were unambiguous. My cognitive function was completely normal for my age. No signs of dementia or impairment. We documented everything. Second, Robert helped me set up what he called the honey trap. We would let Michael think his plan was working while documenting every step of his attempted fraud. The trap was elegant in its simplicity, and Michael walked right into it. The following week, I called Michael and told him I'd decided he was right. I was ready to sign the papers and move to Golden Sunset. The excitement in his voice was barely concealed. "That's wonderful, Henry. I'm so proud of you for making this decision. Sarah's going to be thrilled." We arranged to meet the next day. Michael arrived with the same briefcase, plus a notary he'd hired, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, who seemed nervous about something. I invited them into my dining room and offered coffee. "Henry, before we start," Michael said, "I should mention that Sarah can't be here today. Emergency at the hospital, but she's completely supportive of this decision." Another lie. I'd spoken to Sarah that morning. She was at home, had no idea about this meeting, and certainly hadn't agreed to sell my house. Michael spread the documents across my table. Power of attorney forms, the listing agreement, and something new, a purchase agreement. He'd already found a buyer for my house. The sale price was $180,000 less than current market value. "The buyer's offering cash, quick closing," Michael explained. "In this market, that's worth the discount." I pretended to review the papers, asking questions an old man might ask. Patricia the notary looked increasingly uncomfortable as Michael rushed through explanations, clearly eager to get signatures before I could change my mind. "This all seems very fast," I said. "Henry, your mind is slipping. The longer we wait, the harder decisions like this become. Trust me, this is what's best for everyone." I picked up the pen, and Michael's eyes gleamed with anticipated victory. What Michael didn't know was that Patricia the notary was actually working for Robert. She was a licensed notary, but also a private investigator who specialized in elder fraud cases. Every word of our conversation was being recorded. I signed the documents with a shaky hand, playing up the confused elderly man routine. Michael was practically vibrating with excitement as Patricia notarized each signature. "Wonderful, Henry. You've made the right choice. Sarah's going to be so relieved." "When do I need to move out?" I asked, letting my voice quaver slightly. "The closing is set for next Tuesday. Golden Sunset has a room ready for you this weekend. I'll help you pack just the essentials. Most of this furniture won't fit anyway." After they left, Patricia and I reviewed the recording. Michael had made several statements that would be crucial in court, claiming Sarah had authorized the sale, misrepresenting the house's value, and most damaging, his repeated assertions about my mental incompetence, despite never having seen any medical evaluation. "He's not very smart for a con artist," Patricia observed. "No," I agreed, "but he's about to get a very expensive education." The next phase of our plan was already in motion. Robert had contacted the district attorney's office. Adult Protective Services had been notified, and most. Importantly, we'd arranged for the real surprise to be delivered at the closing. Michael thought he was going to walk away with a hefty commission from selling an old man's house. Instead, he was walking into a carefully laid trap. Friday afternoon, Michael showed up with a moving truck and 2 workers he'd hired. He'd told them they were helping a confused elderly man move to assisted living. I played my part, acting overwhelmed and grateful for his help. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Michael," I said, watching him direct the workers to load my antique furniture. "You're like the son I never had." The irony was lost on him. He was too busy mentally counting his profits. Sarah called that evening, concerned because she'd heard from a neighbor that there was a moving truck at my house. Michael had told her I was just donating some old furniture to charity. More lies, but Sarah trusted her husband. "Dad, are you okay? Mrs. Patterson said you were moving?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I assured her. "Michael's been helping me organize some things. Why don't you come by Sunday for dinner? I have some news to share." Saturday, I spent the day at Golden Sunset Manor, touring the facility with Michael and pretending to be excited about my new home. The staff was kind, the facility was clean, but the monthly cost was astronomical. Michael didn't seem concerned about the expense, probably because he wasn't planning to pay for it long term. "Don't worry about the cost, Henry," he said. "Once we sell the house, there'll be plenty of money." Sunday morning, I made Sarah's favorite breakfast and waited for her to arrive. She had no idea that in 48 hours, her husband would be in handcuffs. Sarah arrived for Sunday dinner looking tired from her hospital shifts, but happy to spend time with me. She'd always been a daddy's girl, and Elizabeth used to joke that Sarah inherited my stubborn streak and sense of justice. "Dad, you seem different lately. More relaxed," she observed as we sat down to eat. "I've been thinking about what Michael said, about my mind slipping. Maybe he's right. Maybe it is time to make some changes." Sarah's expression shifted to concern. "Dad, What kind of changes? I told her about the assisted living facility, about feeling overwhelmed living alone in such a big house. I watched her face carefully as I spoke, seeing the conflict between wanting me to be safe and recognizing that something felt wrong. Dad, when did you tour Golden Sunset? Michael didn't mention that you'd decided anything definite. We went yesterday. Michael's been handling most of the arrangements. He says my judgment isn't reliable anymore. Sarah's nursing instincts kicked in. She started asking pointed questions about my daily routine, my medications, my memory. After 20 minutes, she sat back with a puzzled expression. Dad, you seem completely normal to me. Your memory's fine. Your reasoning is clear. When Michael says your mind is slipping, what exactly is he referring to? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Sarah, what would you say if I told you Michael has been lying to you? The color drained from her face. What do you mean? I told her everything. The power of attorney documents, the house sale, the lies about her authorizing everything. With each detail, Sarah's expression grew more horrified. Dad, please tell me you didn't sign anything. I'm afraid I did, sweetheart. The closing is tomorrow morning. Sarah spent Sunday night on my couch, unwilling to go home and face Michael. Monday morning, she called in sick to work. She wanted to confront her husband immediately, but I convinced her to wait. Trust me, Sarah, let this play out. Justice is coming, but it has to happen the right way. Monday afternoon, Michael stopped by to go over final details for the closing. He was practically glowing with anticipation. Sarah stayed hidden in my study, listening through the door. Henry, I'm so proud of you for taking this step. Tomorrow morning, we'll sign the final papers, transfer the deed, and you'll be all set up in your new place. No more worries about maintenance, taxes, any of that complicated stuff. Michael, can I ask you something? What happens to the money from the sale? Don't worry about that. I'll invest it safely for you. You just focus on enjoying your golden years. After Michael left, Sarah emerged from the study looking sick. Dad, how much is he stealing? About $400,000, give or take. The house is worth nearly $600,000. He's selling it for $200,000, taking a substantial commission and planning to manage whatever's left. We have to stop this. We will. Tomorrow morning at the notary's office, but Sarah, you need to be prepared. Your marriage is over. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know, I've been married to a stranger. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect weather for what was about to unfold. The closing was scheduled for 10 o'clock at the notary's office downtown. Michael arrived early, eager and confident. The buyers were there, a young couple excited about getting such a good deal on a house. The real estate agents were shuffling papers, ready to collect their commissions. I arrived exactly on time, playing the role of the confused elderly man one last time. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited about my new adventure. Michael beamed. Henry's moving to assisted living today. This sale is going to make everything possible for him. The notary, not Patricia this time, but the office's regular notary, began reviewing documents. Everything seemed routine until there was a knock on the door. Robert walked in, followed by Detective Williams from the Financial Crimes Unit and an attorney from the District Attorney's Office. Excuse me, Robert announced. We need to stop this closing immediately. Michael's face went pale. What's going on here? Detective Williams stepped forward. Michael, you're under arrest for attempted elder financial abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. The room erupted in confusion. The buyers were demanding explanations. The real estate agents were frantically calling their brokers. Michael was sputtering denials and accusations. This is insane, Michael shouted as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Henry's not competent to manage his affairs. His old mind is slipping. Robert smiled and handed the detective a thick folder. Actually, Michael, Mr. Henry underwent comprehensive neurological testing last month. His cognitive function is perfect. He's also a retired attorney who's been documenting your fraud attempt for weeks. Michael's eyes found mine across the room. Gone was the confused old man he thought he'd been manipulating. In his place stood the sharp legal mind that had spent 40 years in courtrooms. Hello, Michael, I said quietly. As you can see, my mind isn't slipping at all, but your freedom certainly is. The buyers got their deposit back. The real estate agents learned a valuable lesson about verifying sellers' intentions, and Michael got a free ride to the county jail, where he had plenty of time to think about how underestimating people can be a very costly mistake. Sarah filed for divorce that afternoon. She kept her maiden name this time. As for me, I'm still living in my house on Maple Street, my mind as sharp as ever, still reading in my study every afternoon. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being exactly who you've always been while letting someone else destroy themselves with their own greed. The only difference now is that I double lock my doors at night, not because I'm afraid, but because I've learned that family isn't always defined by marriage certificates, and trust, once broken, requires new security measures. Michael's learning about security measures too from the other side of steel bars.